إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن عليًا ولي الله أشهد أن عليًا حجة الله هيا على الصلاة هيا على الصلاة هيا على الفلاح هيا على الفلاح هيا على خير العمل هيا على خير العمل الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الله
Surah Muzammil. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها المزمل قم الليل إلا قليلا نصفه أو انقص منه قليلا أو زد عليه ورتل القرآن ترتيلا إنا سنلقي عليك قولا ثقيلا إن ناشئة الليل هي أشد وطئا وأقوم قيلا إن لك في النهار سبحا طويلا واذكر اسم ربك وتبتل إليه تبتيلا رب المشرق والمغرب لا إله إلا هو فاتخذه وكيلا واصبر على ما يقولون واهجرهم هجرا جميلا وذرني والمكذبين أولي النعمة ومهلهم قليلا إن لدينا أنكالا وجحيما وطعاما ذا غصة وعذابا أليما يوم ترجف الأرض والجبال وكانت الجبال كثيبا مهيلا إنا أرسلنا إليكم رسولا شاهدا عليكم كما أرسلنا إلى فرعون رسولا فعصى فرعون الرسول فأخذناه أخذا وبيلا فكيف تتقون إن كفرتم يوما يجعل الولدان شيبا السماء منفطر به كان وعده مفعولا إن هذه تذكرة فمن شاء اتخذ إلى ربه سبيلا إن ربك يعلم أنك تقوم أدنى من ثلثي الليل ونصفه وثلثه وطائفة من الذين معك والله يقدر الليل والنهار علم أن لن تحصوه فتاب عليكم فاقرؤوا ما تيسر من القرآن علم أن سيكون منكم مرضى وآخرون يضربوا في الأرض وابتغون من فضل الله وآخرون يقاتلون في سبيل الله فاقرؤوا ما تيسر منه وأقيموا الصلاة وآتوا الزكاة وأقرضوا الله قرضا حسنا وما تقدموا لأنفسكم من خير تجدوه عند الله هو خيرا وأعظم أجرا واستغفروا الله إن الله غفور رحيم صدق الله العلي العظيم. سورة المباركة الفاتحة.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد اللهم إني أسألك وأتوجه إليك بنبيك نبي الرحمة صلى الله عليه وآله يا أبا القاسم يا رسول الله يا إمام الرحمة يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا الحسن يا أمير المؤمنين يا علي بن أبي طالب يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا فاطمة الزهراء يا بنت محمد يا قرة عين الرسول يا سيدتنا مولاتنا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيهة عند الله اشفعي لنا عند الله يا أبا محمد يا حسن بن علي أيها المجتبى يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا عبد الله يا حسين بن علي أيها الشهيد يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا الحسن يا علي بن الحسين يا زين العابدين يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها يا أبا جعفر يا محمد بن علي أيها الباقر يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا أبا عبد الله يا جعفر بن محمد أيها الصادق يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها اشفع لنا يا أبا الحسن يا موسى بن جعفر أيها القاسم يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا يا أبا الحسن يا علي بن موسى أيها الرضا يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا جعفر يا محمد بن علي أيها التقي الجواد يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا الحسن يا علي بن محمد أيها الهادي النقي يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها اشفع لنا يا أبا محمد يا حسن بن علي أيها الزكي العسكري يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها يا وسي الحسن والخلف الحجة أيها القائم المنتظر المهدي يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا وجيها حاجت يا سادتي وموالي إني توجهت بكم أئمتي وعدتي ليوم فقري وحاجتي إلى الله وتوسلت بكم إلى الله واستشفعت بكم إلى الله فاشفعوا لي عند الله واستنقذوني من ذنوبي عند الله فإنكم وسيلتي إلى الله وبحبكم وبقربكم أرجو نجاة من الله فكونوا عند الله رجائي يا سادتي يا أولياء الله صلى الله عليهم أجمعين ولعن الله أعداء الله ظالميهم من الأولين والآخرين آمين رب العالمين. سورة المباركة الفاتحة.
محمد و آل محمد صلوات. جب امام زمانہ آئیں گے جب امام زمانہ آئیں گے پھر بقیہ کو ہم بنائیں گے پھر بقیہ کو ہم بنائیں گے قبر زہرا کی ہوگی جب تعمیر قبر زہرا کی ہوگی جب تعمیر انبیاء سب بلائے جائیں گے پھر بقیہ کو ہم بنائیں گے اپنے مولا حسن کا دسترخوان اپنے مولا حسن کا دسترخوان زائروں کے لیے بچھائیں گے پھر بقیہ کو ہم بنائیں گے قبر بیمار کربلا کے قریب قبر بیمار کربلا کے قریب، ایک صحن شفا بنائیں گے، پھر بقیہ کو ہم بنائیں گے۔ عشق باقر میں اور صادق میں، عشق باقر میں اور صادق میں، ایک دارالقلم بنائیں گے، پھر بقیہ کو ہم بنائیں گے۔ صحن ام البنین کے اندر، صحن ام البنین کے اندر، پانی پیاسوں کو ہم پلائیں گے، پھر بقیہ کو ہم بنائیں گے۔ یاد قاسم میں قبر شابر پر، یاد قاسم میں قبر شابر پر، آنسوؤں کے دیے جلائیں گے، پھر بقیہ کو ہم بنائیں گے۔ قبر زہرا پہ پرچم عباس، قبر زہرا پہ پرچم عباس، خود امام زمان لگائیں گے، پھر بقیہ کو ہم بنائیں گے، پھر بقیہ کو ہم بنائیں گے۔ جب امام زمان آئیں گے، پھر بقیہ کو ہم بنائیں گے، پھر بقیہ کو ہم بنائیں گے۔ بر محمد و آل محمد صلوات۔
Sayyid Hassan Rizvi, respected elders, dearest brothers and sisters in Iman, Assalamu alaikum, Jamiyan wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Surah Fatiha is requested for all marhumeen listed on the screen, as well as all other marhumeen. Surah Mubarak al-Fatiha. Dua Shafa Maries is requested for all those who are in need here and elsewhere. Let us recite together. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء 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 أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء. Ya Allah. The Muharram and Safar Fund is still open. Please see Brother Abbas Alu or Brother Sibtain Yusufali in the men's side or Sister Fatima Abdul Hussein in the sister's side to make a donation. You may also use the QR code displayed on the screen in order to donate. The ladies' majlis for Bibi Sakina's wafat will be on Friday morning and not Saturday morning. The ladies' Bibi Zainab Day will inshallah be held on Saturday afternoon at 4 p.m. We'll now have majlis by Sayyid Hassan Rizvi. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
رحم الله من قرأ الفاتحة بعد الصلوات. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وبه نستعين. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. والحمد لله رب العالمين. والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين شفيع المذنبين رحمة للعالمين سيدنا والنبينا وحبيب قلوبنا والشفيع نفوسنا والطبيب ذنوبنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد. اللهم صل على محمد. ثم الصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من الأولين والآخرين إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد. صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. Mu'mineen, mu'minat, brothers and sisters in Islam and Iman, Salamun alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. When we talk about the members of the Ahlul Bayt and their qualities and their traits and their characteristics, all of those positive, good qualities that we've come to know, that they're kind and they're generous and they're loving and they're forgiving and all of these things, they're obvious at this point. And sometimes people want to mention the fada'il of the Ahlul Bayt, so they may mention a story here or there, just to help us remember how incredibly, good they are, right? How moral they actually were. And the point, hopefully, is for you and I to hear the story, to use that as sort of a catalyst, and to try to change our own behavior, right? To use them as role models. Most of these qualities are fairly obvious too, whether even you're Muslim or not. For example, the idea of giving charity, being generous, taking care of the less fortunate. You don't need to be a Muslim to know that that's a good thing to do. But with Muslims, the idea of why it's being done and how it's supposed to be done differs from what probably anybody else would do. Probably even other Muslims. The followers of the Ahlul Bayt, because of the examples left by the Ahlul Bayt, should have a sense of responsibility and feel this sort of duty and perform this taking care of those less fortunate, giving sadaqah, giving charity, taking care of those who are economically, deprived and less fortunate. We should be at a different level and a stage. Now, we've heard many stories about the Ahlul Bayt and, that people come, they ask, and they give them money, right? So we hear that. But still, if you ask the average Shia about what specifically they should do whenever they encounter people who ask for money, or whenever we know that there are people, whether they're in the community or outside the community, whether they're from within our center, or it's some non-Muslim, non-Shia maybe on the streets that we encounter as we drive around. What exactly do we do? And sometimes the question is very specific. How much should I give? More importantly, should I even give or not? Because a lot of people ask, if I have a good hunch and I suspect that they're probably going to take this money and spend it on something which is definitely not beneficial for them, and more probably haram, right? Something that you and I wouldn't want to do, and we wouldn't want somebody else to do that. And that's why people normally, they say instead of giving money, maybe we'll buy them food or we'll bring them clothes or, something like that. They try to think outside the box. But at the end of the day, the question would still remain, what exactly have the Ahlul Bayt done in these kind of situations? When they give sadaqah, is it conditional or is it unconditional? When they give sadaqah, whether it's conditional or unconditional, what sort of amounts did they actually give? Is there a way that we can come up with some sort of formula or calculation so the next time, whether we're donating, to somebody in the community through the center or on our own, if we find out a family member of ours is in need, if we're out in the streets and we're trying to figure out, how exactly should I give? Hopefully through tonight, through the examples, the various examples that were mentioned from somebody who was generous, somebody who was extremely generous, and although it wasn't one of his known names, he was definitely a Kareem, just like all of the members of the Ahlul Bayt were Kareem. And this is, of course, as we look into the personality and some of the stories of Imam Hassan ibn Ali al-Mujtaba alayhi salatu wassalam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala. Now, of course, it should go without saying, but I have to say it anyway. If we're trying to develop a proper sense of an Islamic social welfare system, we're not going to do it on the minbar. It's not going to be solved in 20, 30, 40 minutes. It's not going to happen. A person would have to, or a team of scholars really, would have to go through all of the ahadith, through the various imams, analyze the socio-political elements during the times of each of these members of the Ahlul Bayt, looking at all these factors. You'd have to calculate a lot of things. It's not as simple as, okay, we have a few stories from the imams, now we just act upon it. We copy it verbatim. That's not the point. What I hope to try to do tonight, inshallah, is mention maybe some of the stories that we haven't heard before. Again, we've all heard stories from many of the members of the Ahlul Bayt, whether it's Rasulullah, whether it's the imams, where people come, they ask, and they give them money. We hear this stuff, or they give them food, they give them clothing. So we know that the Ahlul Bayt give, and they give a lot. That much we know. But some of these stories, especially from the second Imam, are very specific. And they may help us maybe understand different ways to think about how we could be and should be giving out charity. So the point here is not for you and I to go home and say, now I definitely know the right way, the Shia way to give out sadaqah. That's not going to happen, right, in the next 20, 30 minutes. What could perhaps happen, what I hope happens, is that after we go through these stories tonight, you with your spouse, with your parents or grandparents, with your kids, your siblings, other community members, baraza, whatever, you start discussing and saying, which of these do I fall into? Which of these categories, if any of them? Should we start shifting towards another one of these categories? Is there a better way that we can live the social welfare model of sadaqah of the Ahlul Bayt, specifically of Imam Hasan alayhi salatu wassalam? Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala. Let's start all the way at the top, right? according to our ulama, they say that 3 times in the life of Imam Hassan, 3 times throughout his life, what he had done, and I'm talking about the maximum right now to set the bar high. Throughout his life, 3 total times, what he had done with all of his wealth is he divided it in half. Right? He took whatever wealth he had, he cut it in half. Half of it he kept, and the other half he divided it amongst the poor. 3 times in his life he did this. Now again, this is something that we can keep in mind. Imagine you and I, sometime, even once in our life, where we're actually look at how much savings we have right now. To cut it in half and keep only half of that, and then give 50% of that to, again, a charitable organization or somebody in need. That's a very difficult thing to do. It sounds like a lot, right? Most of us, again, the struggle probably is 5, 10, 20 bucks, right, on the side of the street to somebody. Maybe for a Muslim, maybe we can give a little more, and that's not much of a struggle. But to think about half of your wealth to give it out to charity, that's a very difficult thing to comprehend. But I want to set the bar high. And that's not even the highest. We can go even higher. The ulama also say, so we said 3 times in his life, he divided his wealth in half and gave it half of that away. There was also twice in his life, in the life of Imam Hassan, where he completely gave everything that he owned. Not half, 100% of everything that was available to him, all of his assets, he gave everything away twice. So 3 times 50%, 2 times 100% of everything he owns. So this is a very, very high standard that he is setting. Again, I'm not saying we all need to go home and start, giving away everything or giving away even 50%. That's not the point. But I want us to understand the mindset that the Ahlul Bayt were in. They were very easily able to do things like this. How were they able to do that? Why were they doing things like this? And was it always like this? Probably not. So I want to go through at least one case where it seems as though the Imam's giving was conditional. The reason the Imam gave wasn't just somebody asking and he said, okay, here you go, here's a bunch of dinars or dirhams or whatever. There was actually a condition for the Imam to give. And within this story, there's actually a few other interesting points that inshallah we'll be able to take out. If you can recite a salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So, they say one day Uthman, right, the famous companion, the 3rd Khalifa, Uthman was sitting next to the masjid. So a faqir, a poor person, approaches him first and asks him for help, says, I need some help, I need some money. So Uthman gives him 5 dirhams. So the poor person takes it and is like, okay, 5 dirhams. He's like, all right, can you, and the poor person says to Uthman, can you guide me and point me towards somebody who can offer more help than this? Okay, so I have to pause right there too. A lot of times we hear these narrations, the Imam gave so many, 5 dirhams or whatever, or the Imam gave this many dinar. Does that actually have any meaning for any of us? 5 dirham, 100 dirham, 50 dinar, 100 dinar, does that actually have any meaning? Those of you who have lived overseas, and if you've lived in countries or spent money or currency in countries that still use or try to use this sort of system of dirham and dinar, it's sort of the same, but not exactly. There's a whole calculation that goes beyond, behind what exactly does a dirham and dinar represent. I don't want to give you all the kind of economic financial calculations, because, I'm sure some of you probably love that stuff, but it's going to take a long time to discuss how that happens. So let me simplify it. Dirhams are basically something which was based on silver. Dinars were something that was based on gold. So 1 dirham, given calculations and purchasing power back then, which I'm skipping all the calculations, consider one dirham equivalent to maybe $3 or $4, something like that. So now when we're hearing that Uthman is giving this poor person, right, this faqir, he's coming and saying, I need help, give me something. He's giving him like 20 bucks, basically. That's what he's giving him. So this is a person who's completely, he has nothing. So when he sees this, he's like, I obviously need a lot more. So he's like, point me to somebody who can do something better than that. So I want to give you this context so that you can understand that this person recognizes that this is not a lot of money. He was expecting a lot more. Now, dinar is something a bit higher. Dinars are based on gold, I think maybe 3-4 grams of gold, something like that. So the equivalent for 1 dinar back then was, if we're using today's purchasing power, or equivalent with what was their purchasing power, we'd say somewhere between $30 to $50, right? 1 gold dinar. Okay, so keep that in mind. So again, Uthman is giving this person like 20 bucks. This faqir is saying, look, point me to somebody else because this is clearly not enough. So there's three individuals standing close to Uthman. He points to them. He says, go to those three people who are at the corner of the masjid, the other corner. Three people sitting down. He said, go to them and perhaps they can take care of what you need. And these three individuals were one, Abdullah ibn Ja'far al-Tayyar, Imam Hassan ibn Ali, and Imam Hussein ibn Ali, alayhi salatu wassalam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So of course, it's two brothers, and Abdullah ibn Ja'far is their cousin, right? So it's two brothers and a cousin. It's, family. So they're sitting at the corner of the masjid. So Uthman points them out, and he says, go ask these three guys, and go ask your request, and make your request to them. So this faqir goes over to them. And when he goes and says, I'm a faqir, I'm in need, help me out, give me some money. Imam Hassan, like we would normally think, right? Normally the Ahlul Bayt just go and say, okay, you have a need, and they give it out. This time, Imam Hassan actually asks him a question. He says, well, first he, gives this statement. He says, asking others for financial help is only appropriate and correct in three situations. So immediately now, Imam is giving us an idea that perhaps asking for money itself, and maybe even giving money, might be conditional, right? So he says asking for financial help is only appropriate in three situations. The first is if you have to pay diyat, like blood money, when you are unable to pay it yourself. Now, blood money is, let's say you're in a case where whether it's accidental or intentional, murder or manslaughter, whatever, using contemporary terms, a person kills somebody else, then there's blood money that's due, right? You have to pay that blood money. And there's various calculations of, how that's done. So, and this happens, right, in Islamic countries. Somebody, let's say, by accident hits somebody in a car, or maybe medical malpractice, something like that. A person dies, and a person, they have to pay the family out, right, for that blood money. And sometimes the amount is very high and people can't pay that. So the Imam is saying this is one of those situations. If you can't pay this blood money, then you are allowed to ask for financial help. Okay. So that's the first situation. The second situation is if you are in a crippling debt, not just any debt, but a crippling debt, and it's the type of debt when there's no means of paying it back whatsoever. You can't do it. It's just not going to happen, right? And some of us may understand that too. A lot of us are stuck in situations in this country, and we're stuck in economic slavery because that's pretty much the model over here, right? The capitalistic model is based on economic slavery. Whether it's through mortgages or whether it's through college loans or in student loans, whether it's through bank loans, whatever it is, the idea is we've gone through physical slavery to economic slavery so that people, up until the end of their life, for many of them, still haven't paid back everything that they owe to the government or to the state or to a bank. And sometimes that continues on and their families, their kids inherit that debt, and that kids unfortunately have to pay that as well, right? And it cripples their life, right? So he's like, this is the second situation. If you have a crippling debt and you're unable to pay it back, then this would be a situation where you can ask for financial assistance. The third situation where you are allowed to ask for financial help is if you are a faqir, you're a poor person. So the other two situations are not if you're poor, it's just if the amount is a lot, right? So keep that in mind. Now he says the third is actually if you are poor. Faqir. Faqir, in the technical sense, means a person who their expenditures are more than their income. So if, for example, in a year, your yearly expenditures are $50,000, for example, right? That's how much it takes for you to survive. If you make $49,999, you are $1 short. You are technically a faqir because you can't afford to live your life, right? You're $1 short. So he says, if you are a faqir, if you're a poor person, and you have no other means of making money for yourself, meaning you've done all you could, and you still can't make ends meet, then you are able to ask for help. Then the Imam says, can I ask you, is it all right if I ask you, do any of these three situations, whether it's the diya, the blood money, whether it's the crippling debt, or you are a faqir, you're a poor person and you don't make enough, do any of these three situations apply to you? Most of the time when we hear narrations about the Ahlul Bayt giving back, we don't hear that there's conditions there. So this may give us the idea that no, sometimes there might be some conditions. So the man replies, and he wants to keep his dignity intact. So he's not going to say exactly what, but he says, yes, my situation is one of these three. So as soon as he says that and he certifies that, Imam says, okay, no problem. the Imam takes out 50 dinar and then hands it to the person. When Imam Hassan gives out 50 dinar, right away Imam Hussein gives the man 49 dinar. Right after Imam Hussein gives the man 49 dinar, Abdullah bin Ja'far gives him 48 dinar. So, a few different points here. So first, let's go back to the financial part. How much did Uthman give? 5 dirhams. 5 dirhams is, again, we said like 20 bucks or something like that. And the man clearly was like, this is like chump change. This is nothing. I need somebody else to help me out. So from there, when you go and shift now to the Ahlul Bayt, Imam Hassan gives 50 dinar. So, all right, math guys, right? So 1 dinar, we said, is somewhere between $30 to $50. So it's somewhere what? Then what would be the final total then? So it's the bare minimum. If 1 dinar is between $30 to $50, and he's giving 50 dinar, about how much is he giving? Yeah. Right? So he's giving a good chunk of change. He's basically blowing Uthman out the water, right? Uthman gives like 20 bucks, and these guys are giving thousands and thousands of dollars. All right, that's a lot of money. Right, it's thousands, right? Sorry, I'm not going to bother calculating in my head. I should have written it down, but I didn't. And what's also interesting about this is you see that there's a level of akhlaq even between the members of the Ahlul Bayt. They first wait for the eldest, right? The one who would technically be the one there. Now, we're assuming that this is probably the time that Imam Ali is alive, so he's actually the Imam of the time, but probably somebody else is the Khalifa. Could be Rasulullah's time, we're not sure. It doesn't really say here. Uthman wasn't a poor person. He was a wealthy member of the Quraysh, right? He was a wealthy person, and he's giving 20 bucks. And this person's like, what's going on here? But when it comes to the Ahlul Bayt, they're giving out a lot of money. The first one to give is Imam Hassan, the eldest, and he gives out a good amount of money. And Imam Hussein, when he sees that, he doesn't match that. But out of respect for his elder brother, the one who's going to be the next Imam, so technically, Imam Hassan, besides being the older brother of Imam Hussein, is still also the Imam of Imam Hussein as well. Out of respect, he gives a lot of money, but he gives 1 dinar less. And then Abdullah bin Ja'far, out of respect for both of these Imams, gives even less than them, but again, 1 dinar less. So Imam Hassan, 50 dinar, right? 50 gold dinar. Imam Hussein, 49, and then Abdullah bin Ja'far, 48. So now this guy's gone from 20 bucks to now collecting thousands and thousands of dollars, which I'm sure really would have helped him out. So now, this person passes right back, collects all this money, and he's passing by Uthman again. And Uthman said, what happened to you? He said, well, I asked you for money, and you gave it to me, but you didn't even ask me what the money was for. When I went to those 3 individuals that you pointed out, one of them asked me for the reason for my request, and I gave him the answer. Then all 3 of them gave me this huge sum of money. Now, Uthman said to this faqir then, he said that this family, right, this family is the center of ilm and hikmah, the center of knowledge and wisdom. They are the fountain, the center, the nucleus of husn and ihsan, goodness and fadila and virtue. Is it possible to find anybody else equal like them? Right, he's trying to cover his own tracks basically here. It's like, of course I couldn't give you a lot. Of course they're going to give you more than me. At the same time, he's, obviously praising the Ahlul Bayt. So what somebody might take away from this sort of hadith is that, see, we were right. We should be asking people. We shouldn't just be giving out money for no reason. We should ask, are you actually in need or not? Do you have a debt or not? I don't think most people have blood money on their shoulders, but for example, right, it seems as though the Imam is giving conditions here. So does that mean that every time we give sadaqah, it should be conditional as well? Well, if we were to stop at this hadith, then everybody would be happy because then it would be giving us an excuse to give less money to people. But of course, we know that that's not the end of the story. There are many other stories of the Ahlul Bayt, specifically of Imam Hassan alayhi salam, and that's what we are going to discuss next. What were some of the unconditional giving out of sadaqah from the hands of Imam Hassan ibn Ali alayhi salatu wasalam? So before, the first example, we'd say that Imam gave money, but there was questions, there was conditions, there was shurut. He asked the person, he taught them, he was like, look, you can't ask unless you meet one of these 3 criteria. Do you meet them? Yes, I do. Okay, fine, we'll give it to you. And he gave him a lot. He gave him a good amount of money. But in these other examples, many of the examples, this is pretty much almost a one-off. This is not the norm, actually. And most of the examples we've probably heard on the minbar from speakers that we've probably read in books, it seems to be that the Ahlul Bayt would give away unconditionally. or the conditions that they would give on the person, or the reason, the cause for them giving out sadaqah would be a lot different than the one from the previous story. So, one quick one is this. Once they say Imam Hassan alayhi salam in the masjid, he saw somebody. Or it doesn't say in the masjid, sorry. He just saw a person making dua. He was praying. And he was asking Allah directly. He said, Allah, I need 10,000 dirhams. Okay, let's pause here. This person is asking for 10,000 dirhams. Now, I just gave you the conversion, right? 1 dirham, $30 to $50. This guy's asking for 10,000 dirhams. How much is that? Dirham. Yeah, right? So it's around $30,000 at least, something like that. This person's asking for $30,000. Immediately after the Imam heard this person praying to Allah, he goes home, he tells his servant, send 30,000, or I said 30,000, yeah, whatever, let's just put it in dollars, right? Send $30,000 directly to this person's house. Immediately. No questions asked. He saw the person asking and he took care of the request right away. That's it. There was no conditions. He didn't ask if he was a lover of the Ahlul Bayt or nothing like that. He saw the person praying and that's it. That's all we have in the story. And many of the stories that you and I hear are like this, unconditional giving. And this is not a small amount. In the previous story, right, there was a lot of money given. But this one, this guy's asking for 10,000 dirhams. It's a lot. And the Imam gave it right away without asking. So we might be questioned, like, how is that possible? Well, there's more stories. Let's go through some more. If you can recite another salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. And this one we see that the Imam, while he's giving, he seems to offer a little bit of an explanation as well. So a person comes to Imam Hassan alayhi salam. He says, Wallah, I swear to Allah, who has granted you so many blessings, so much barakat, so many ni'amat, all these wonderful gifts in your life that you have. Who has granted you this without a wasila, without a mediator? Meaning like you've got a direct connection to God, you're getting all this great stuff. This is what the person is saying to Imam Hassan. And he's like, now, I'm asking you, he's asking Imam Hassan, save me from this oppressor. There's a zalim who is oppressing me. He's my enemy. He doesn't respect me. He doesn't respect the elderly. He doesn't have mercy on any children. Save me from this zalim. So Imam Hassan is like, he was leaning, they say. He got up immediately. He's like, who is this zalim? Who is this enemy who's oppressing? Praise you at least. Like, let me do something. Like, because the Imam just gave him all the money and sent him on his way. So this person's very confused. Because he probably had it in his mind, as sometimes we end up doing to people, what's this money for? What are you going to do with it? Have you actually gone out and tried to find a job? Have you gone all this? We end up almost disgracing people when they ask for money, right? We lower their dignity when we ask all these questions and put all these conditions on there. And this person's like, I'm surprised you're not asking me anything. You're not letting me tell you why I need the money. You're not even letting me praise you. So he's curious. So the Imam answers. He says, we are the people, Imam saying, we are the people whose bounties, whose barakat and ni'mah flows. From all these bounties that we have, hopes and wishes dwell inside there. Meaning the hopes and wishes of mankind, they exist within the barakat and ni'mat that Allah gives us. It's a different way of thinking, right? He says, our souls give out before we are asked. Because another principle that the Ahlul Bayt have taught us is that, look, it's okay, it's good that when somebody asks you, you give them, that's nice. But the principle of the Ahlul Bayt is if you can, and you know somebody's in need, before they ask you, you should be giving out. So the Imam is saying, our souls, they command us to give out before we are asked, in fear of the disgrace of the one who asks. Because again, to come and ask somebody for money is a disgrace. It's tough for somebody to do. It's very, very tough. Whether it's a loan, or whether it's, because they're actually in need, they need charity, they need help. It doesn't feel good for the heart and soul. Right? You see a lot of these individuals who are on, the sides of the street. They're holding up these signs. Nobody's happy doing that. I'm sure they don't want to panhandle like that. It's a terrible position to be in. May Allah help them all. And anybody in the community who might be in that kind of tough situation. It's very, very difficult to deal with. The Imam doesn't want somebody to be in that disgraceful state where they have to come and say, please, I need money. So they go out on their own and they do their best to try to give out. And the Imam ends. He says, if the sea, if the ocean were to know how much we give out to people who ask us, the sea and the ocean itself would shrink in embarrassment. It's an amazing thing, right? Because when we understand the analogy here, right? The ocean, the sea, It's water that's endless, right? That water will never go away. So it's almost as if the Imam is saying perhaps that, look, the ocean, the sea has this pride in it that it can quench anybody's thirst, right? It has this endless water there. So anybody who comes, it can give out. But the Imam is saying that the sea would be embarrassed, would be in a state of guilt and shame when it sees how much the Ahlul Bayt actually give out and how they do this without people asking. Because the ocean, you have to come yourself, right? And almost take from the ocean. But the ocean doesn't come to us and give. The Imam is saying that the Ahlul Bayt, we go to people ourselves and we give them. And this falls in line with what we see from Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib, alayhi salatu wasalam. In, I believe it's in Nahj al-Balagha, when he's describing the characteristic and traits of Rasulullah, he says that he was a tabib dawarun bi-tibbi, that he was a doctor who went around with medicine and gave it to people. Normally, you and I have to go right to the doctor and say, look, this is my illness, treat me. But the Prophet himself was going around and giving these treatments to individuals. He was taking the initiative. He wasn't waiting for people to come. He was going out to those who he knew were in need because of their spiritual diseases, or in this situation, financial need, and he went out and took care of them. So over here, we are again hearing another principle of the Ahlul Bayt, that besides being unconditional, besides just giving out almost everything that they had when they could, the other thing that they would do is, the one condition that they actually put on themselves is that they would try their best to give out before they were asked. Somebody else had asked the Imam, it's interesting. Ya ibn Rasulullah, when I see a beggar come to you, I see that you never leave them hanging. You never disappoint somebody who asks you. Why is that the case? And the Imam says it like this, which is really beautiful. He says, look, I ask Allah for favors. I ask Allah for barakat and ni'mat and gifts. I love to be near Allah. I am ashamed, however, that just like me, I know I'm in need of Allah. That's why I make dua. I want these things and gifts from Allah. I'm in need, so I make dua. I ask Allah. I am ashamed to refuse and send away somebody who's asking me, a beggar. Why? Because Allah has gotten me habituated to something. He's given me an adat. What kind of adat? He says the adat that Allah has given is this. His adat, Allah's habit, is that He showers us. He showers me with blessings constantly. He gives me more than I need. So then, in turn, I respond to Allah. And I say, Allah, if you're going to give, you have this adat with me, and you give me all these blessings, then I in turn will do the same thing back to you. I will get used to giving those same blessings out to other individuals. So the same sunnatullah that you have of giving out blessings to me more than I deserve, I'll take that and I'll funnel that to and give out those blessings and bounties to everybody else in need. So the adat Allah is now becoming the adat of the Ahlul Bayt. And this is what happens when we're talking about the Ahlul Bayt being manifestations of Allah's names. When He's Ar-Razaq, Ar-Raziq, the Ahlul Bayt are doing the exact same thing. You and I, for our rizq, sometimes we ask for it, but sometimes it just comes to us without us asking. The Ahlul Bayt are saying that we are ashamed that we know we're in need of Allah. And sometimes we don't even know how deep our need gets. We would be ashamed to refuse and turn away a beggar. They say, as best as we can, we need to make sure we're taking care of everybody's needs. So our adat is that we shower our bounties that Allah has given us, His bounties, we shower them and we redirect them towards the people that need it. I fear, Imam is saying, I fear that I stop this habit. If I stop this, maybe Allah stops showering me with blessings as well. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. One more point and then we'll end. So far what we've talked about is basically the peak is the Imam giving away everything. In one case at least we see the Imam was conditional and then he asked questions, but he still gave out a good amount of money. In all these other situations we see the Imam is giving out every single thing that he has. Just telling a servant, go back and give them money. Whether the person's making dua, whether he gets asked, or whether the Imam simply comes to know that they're in need and he goes out on his own and gives. And we heard some of the reasons. But how exactly should we be giving? Now, again, in our own situation, is our job just to take care of somebody's immediate need? Like if somebody, let's say right now, I got hit with a high medical bill. My medical bill right now is, $10,000 for this surgery. Can you help me out? I can't pay it right now. Okay, sure. Let's say we come together, we loan or just pay them off, GoFundMe, whatever. We take care of this person. Okay, $10,000 is gone. They don't have that debt anymore. What's going to happen next time something happens, right? It's Florida. roof issue, AC issue, something at the house. Car breaks down. If that person can't afford that medical treatment, they probably can't afford any sort of big emergency thing, right? They don't have a rainy day fund. So is our job only to do this one-off, like just help them out and that's it? Are we done? Or should we be striving for something higher? And is it conditional also upon the akhlaq and character of the person that we might be giving to? So I'm going to share one more story, inshallah, then we'll end. So this story is again going with the same three individuals that we mentioned in one of the previous stories. So it's Abdullah bin Ja'far, right, the cousin of the Imams, and Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein, alayhimus salatu wassalam. So all of them were traveling once, and as they were traveling in the middle of the desert, they became separated from their caravan. They actually got lost. Time passed on, and they became very thirsty as they were walking through the desert trying to find a place. Suddenly, they saw a tent of one of these Bedouins, right? These people who kind of lived off in the middle of, outside the outskirts of the city in the desert. They found a tent, so they went there. An old lady came out, and she immediately gave them some water. She cooked a lamb for them and fed them as well. And again, Bedouins lived very simple lifestyles. So this is pretty much everything that this Bedouin lady had. So as they're about to leave, they told this old woman, they said, look, if you ever come to Medina, come see us so that maybe we can pay you back for this kindness that you have shown us. So the kindness is what? This Bedouin lady, there's no real reason that she has to help these three random strangers, right? She could have just given them some water and said, be on your way. But everything she had available to her, right? Besides water, she cooked, she went out, she cooked them a meal, like a lamb, which is a nice piece of meat, and she fed them all too. So this sort of akhlaqi trait perhaps was noticed by the Ahlul Bayt. So they said, look, we want to pay you back if you ever come to Medina. Now, it just so happens that somewhere in the future, after some time, there was an extreme drought that took place, and it hit the deserts, especially hard. So the Bedouins had to seek refuge and come into Medina, right? Because that's where there was more collected water, wells, and wealth, and things like that. But of course, when the Bedouins are in the city, because they don't really have normal incomes, they just live their simple lifestyles out in the desert, so they didn't have anything. So all of these poor refugees, and I'm using these terms very specifically so you can understand what I'm talking about, and hopefully, if you're thinking enough, you can understand why I'm saying it like this. These refugees are coming from outside with nothing, used to this simple lifestyle. They come to Medina, and there's all this wealth in Medina, right? They would come and they'd ask for people for help, but what do you think people did? They're Bedouins, right? They don't know what they're doing. They're not good with money. They're this, they're that. Maybe some people, just like Uthman did before, maybe they'd give a few dirhams or dinars here and there, and that's it, right? Just simple stuff so that the person would get by day to day. They go, look, this is good enough for you to get a meal. That's it, khudafis. One day, Imam Hassan alayhi salam was walking throughout Medina, and he saw this old lady from a distance. So he ran up to her, because this old lady was begging, right, asking for help. And he said, do you remember who I am? Salaam alaikum. Do you remember who I am? He says, alaikum salam. Like, no, I don't know who you are. He said, my brother and my cousin, we came to you. We were in need. We were thirsty. We were hungry, and you fed us. You gave us water. You quenched our thirst. Sorry, I don't remember. She actually didn't remember anything at all. Some of us have very, very, everything else we forget. When it comes to doing favors for everybody else, we've got like a whole database log. Like, 10 years ago, I lent you $7.37, when we went out to the gas station, this and that. So right now, you can't give me this amount of money, right? We have very selective memory, unfortunately. And the Imam said, look, you might not remember, but I do. I remember that kindness. So what does the Imam do? He gives her a huge sum of money. It doesn't say specifically, but I'll say why it matters. A huge sum of money, and he actually gives her sheep as well. So there's two things he does. One is he actually gives her what we could say is actual money that will help her in the immediate. Secondly, he's giving her sheep, because if now she has sheep, she's actually now a businesswoman, right? Because she can graze that sheep, she can use it for wool, she can use it for milk, she can use it for meat, she can do whatever she wants. So not only does she have startup funds, she actually has the material or resources that she needs to become self-sufficient and independent. You might say, okay, that's really nice. That's really good. But after that was done, Imam Hussein gave her even more money right after that. And then, of course, just like that, Abdullah bin Ja'far did the same thing and gave her even more as well. Combining with all of these three individuals their sum of money, they say that this woman, just from these three acts of repayment of kindness, she became one of the most wealthiest women in Medina. I want you to understand that and really think about that for a second. She was poor. She had absolutely nothing. She just came as a refugee from the streets. Imam Hassan himself ran up to her after she was asking everybody else. Not Imam Hassan, he went up to her on his own. He gave her money and he gave her the means to start a business. Imam Hussein gave her funds as well, and Abdullah gave her funds as well. It didn't just take her out of poverty. It took her from one financial class and blew her across all financial classes till she became one of the most wealthiest people in Medina. So now, remember that high level of wealth I was talking about before where the Imam would give away everything? Okay, that sounds great. Can you imagine people, individuals who are so wealthy that when they give out wealth to other people, they can not just take them out of poverty, not just make them, take away their loans, but make them such that they're self-sufficient, independent, and that they are become wealthier than everybody else? This was the generosity of the Ahlul Bayt. When they saw this sort of akhlaq, these characteristics in other people, they said, look, these are the types of individuals that deserve as much wealth as possible. So we see also that the Ahlul Bayt, when they funneled and they channeled these bounties and blessings that Allah gave them, all this money and wealth, what they would do is, yes, the general public, they would give out. They would take care of their needs, no doubt. They would go out of their ways and give people huge sums of money. But perhaps for those who had that high level of akhlaq, because of what they saw in their hearts, not only would they just give them and take care of their needs, they would completely change their financial situation. Why? Perhaps because they knew when this type of individual becomes extremely wealthy, then they themselves would become a source for everybody else now to become out of poverty. Because perhaps through this now, this lady, having lived through poverty, will now give out that same wealth to other individuals. This lady now with her business will engage in proper halal, even mustahab business practices. Are these the type of things that you and I think about when we are engaging in giving out wealth? Could any of us ever imagine giving out so much wealth that we actually make somebody else wealthy? And let's be honest, we know that there are many members of the community who are in that sort of situation. Is this something that you and I can even fathom? If not, if that's not even on our radar, then that means we are very, very far away from establishing a community that is conducive to allowing for the return of the Imam of the time. The Imam is going to need people like this, who are able to just give out wealth like that and to take our Shi'as from not just from poverty to being middle class, but from poverty to extreme wealth and independence and self-sufficiency. Keep these things in mind, discuss them with your family and friends, and think about how we together as a community can start striving towards these higher levels of akhlaq and giving out sadaqah. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. When we talk about the charity of the Ahlul Bayt, we know that they had a lot of money, but at the same time, especially in the beginning of the movement, the Ahlul Bayt weren't always wealthy like this. Or if they had the wealth, because they gave it away, they did the exact opposite. When they were helping everybody else go from faqr, from poverty to extreme wealth, they themselves went from being rich, being the heads and elites of the society, they gave away everything, so much so that they themselves became faqir and fuqara. So much so that we know the famous stories that many times they couldn't afford food. They couldn't afford new clothing. And how sad it is for parents or even grandparents when your children or your grandchildren ask you for a gift. How much would it break your heart if they come and they ask you for something and because of your financial, incapability, your financial handicap, you're unable to get your child, your grandchild a gift? Can you imagine what would have happened in the heart of Rasulullah when on that famous Eid, Imam Hassan, Imam Hussein as young children come to Rasulullah and they say, no, Ya Jaddah, Nana, Eid is tomorrow, but everybody else in Medina, they have brand new clothes. We don't have anything. Everybody else gets new, they get brand new colorful clothing. We don't have anything. What are we supposed to do? We feel sad. And Rasulullah had nothing to give. This was the abject poverty that they lived in because they gave out so much. When this dua of Hassanain is heard, and it goes straight to the heavens, Jibreel descends down, as many of you know the famous story. Jibreel comes down and says that Allah has sent down a gift for your grandchildren. These two beautiful white heavenly thobes come down. And he gives them to Rasulullah. Rasulullah says, look, Allah through Jibreel has sent these two beautiful white thobes down for you. Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein say, Alhamdulillah, Nana, this is beautiful, but everybody else has all these beautiful colors. You know, white is nice, but wouldn't it be nice if we could have some color on ours too? And can we pick our colors too? And Rasulullah says, yes. He asked Jibreel, he said, yes. Put it in water, and then we will allow it to change color. So first, they take the thobe of Imam Hassan and they put it in water. And Imam Hassan says, Nana, I want mine to be green. So he says green, and then after Rasulullah wrings this out, he takes it out and it turns green. He says, Ya Hussein, Ya Bunayya, what color do you want? He says, Nana, I want red. He puts the thobe, the white thobe, into the water. He wrings it and he pulls it out and it turns into this beautiful red. And he hands it to Imam Hussein. And now both of them are smiling. And when this all happens, Rasulullah noticed that Jibreel is crying profusely. Rasulullah says, Jibreel, why are you mourning on a day like this? This is the day, this is Yawm Eid. This is a day of happiness. Allah, through you, has made my grandchildren happy. This is Sayyid al-Shabab Ahl al-Jannah. You've made them happy with these gifts. Why are you crying on a day like this? Is, Ya Rasulullah, if you knew what I knew, and when I tell you what I will tell you, then you will shed tears as well. There is a specific reason why your grandchildren chose these colors. The reason that Imam Hassan chose this green is because this green will represent the color of his skin when the poison will be given to him. That poison will be so extreme in his body, it'll seep through every single part of his body that his whole body will turn green. And do you know, Ya Rasulullah, that your grandson Hussein, on the day of Ashura, his body will be covered in red, just like his body is covered in red, and the red, this ruby red that his thobe is in right now. How heartbreaking must it have been for Rasulullah to see his young children in this state? You know, Imam Hassan, just like Imam Hussein, had a very special place in their heart for Zainab as well. When Imam Hassan was given this poison, and the poison was affecting him, and it was messing with his internal organs, they say it was affecting him so much that whenever he would cough up, in addition to coughing up blood, he would cough up pieces of his organs, pieces of his liver. This is how much poison that he was given. So his servant had given him a special tray so that anytime he had to cough, he would take the tray out and begin coughing and spitting into this. Whenever he kept it near the side of his bed, whenever he would hear the voice of Zainab coming to say that he would take this dish and hide it because he didn't want Zainab to see what state he was in. And Zainab would come and perhaps say, Ya akhi, what are you hiding from me? I can see this extreme poison and how it's affected you. But Zainab still had to see the effect and how tough it must have been for her on the day when Imam Hassan became Shaheed. When the arrows hit the taboot of Imam Hassan, when they were trying to make the ziyarah of Rasulullah, as they take the taboot, the janazah, they bring it back to the house of the Imams. As Abbas and Hussein are pulling out the arrows one by one, Zainab comes to them and says, let me help, akhi, let me help take out the arrows from the body of my brother too. Abbas and Hussein say, Zainab, this is not a job for a woman. This is not something that you should be doing. He says, no, this is my brother. I should be allowed to do this too. So they say, Abbas, Hussein, and Zainab together were taking out the arrows from the taboot and the body of Imam Hassan. Now fast forward to Yawm al-Ashura. They say Zainab, when she was taken on Sham-e Ghariba looking through the bodies, when she looked at the body of Imam Hussein, she said, Ya Hussein, do you remember when I was taking out the arrows from our brother Hassan? Right now, I wish I could help you, but my hands are tied in ropes. I'm unable to take out these arrows that are in your body right now. على لعنة الله على قوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون رضا بقضائه وتسليما لأمره صلوات على محمد وآل محمد.
Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein. कहती थी ज़ैनब खस्ततन भाई हसन कहती थी ज़ैनब खस्ततन भाई हसन कहती थी ज़ैनब खस्ततन بھائی حسن بھائی حسن دیکھو میرا رنجو مہن بھائی حسن بھائی حسن کہتی تھی سن سب جان کھوتے ہیں اٹھو شبیر روتے ہیں اٹھو ہے جاں بلب غم میں بہن بھائی حسن بھائی حسن کہتے حسن بھائی حسن کہتی تھی زہرا کی گودی کے پلے مرکز میں سونے کو چلے اے مصطفیٰ کے جان و تن بھائی حسن بھائی حسن کہتی تھی زینب خاصتاً بھائی حسن کہتی تھی زینب خاصتاً حسن کیسا وہ قاتل زیر تھا کیسا غضب یہ ہو گیا نیلا ہے سب گل سا بدن بھائی 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 کہتی تھی زینب خاص اماں موئی نانا موئے بابا موئے اور تم چلے اب کیا کرے ذکر بہن بھائی حسن بھائی حسن کہتی تھی زینب خاص حسن کہتی تھی ایک بھائی نے ایک بھائی کو مرتے ہوئے دیکھا ایک بھائی نے ایک بھائی کو مرتے ہوئے دیکھا شبیر نے شبر کو تڑپتے ہوئے دیکھا ایک بھائی نے ایک بھائی کو مرتے ہوئے دیکھا ایک بھائی نے ایک بھائی کو مرتے ہوئے دیکھا شبیر نے شبر کو تڑپتے ہوئے دیکھا وہ درد کی شدت وہ طرف اور وہ الجھن دم بھائی کا زینب نے نکلتے ہوئے دیکھا ایک بھائی نے ایک بھائی کو مرتے ہوئے دیکھا ایک بھائی نے ایک بھائی کو مرتے ہوئے دیکھا شبیر نے شبر کو تڑپتے ہوئے دیکھا وہ تشت میں کٹ کٹ کے وہ بے کس کا کلیجا شبیر نے دل تھام کے گرتے ہوئے دیکھا ایک بھائی نے ایک بھائی کو تے ہوئے دیکھا ایک بھائی نے ایک بھائی کو مرتے دیکھا شبیر نے شرتے ہوئے دیکھا تربت نہ ملی نانا کے پہلو میں حسن کو تیروں کو جنازے پہ برستے ہوئے دیکھا ایک بھائی نے ایک بھائی کو مرتے ہوئے دیکھا ایک بھائی نے ایک بھائی کو مرتے ہوئے یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین ہائے ہائے زینب ہائے ہائے شام 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 ہائے ہائے
ہائے ہائے شام ہائے شام 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 شام میں دیتی کفن تجھ کو بھیا گر سر پہ ردا میری ہوتی گھر ہوتے کھلے ہاتھ میرے تیرے زخموں کو ہاتھوں سے دھوتی پابندے رسن سر برہنا پابندے رسن سر برہنا دیکھو بھیا چلی ہوں میں شام شام ہائے شام شام ہائے شام شام ہم شام جس زینب کو تم نے برا دے کبھی نظریں اٹھا کر نہ دیکھا ہاتھ رسی سے میرے بندھے ہیں اور سر پہ نہیں میرے پردہ کیسے کوفے میں جاؤں گی غازی کیسے کوفے میں جاؤں گی غازی جب مجمع میں آئے گا نام شام ہائے شام شام ہائے شام شام ہم شام جیسے دربار پاس آ رہا ہے میرا دل ڈوبتا جا رہا ہے میں تو گھر میں بھی کم بولتی تھی بھائی تم کو تو سب کچھ پتا ہے کس طرح سے کرے گی بتا دے کس طرح سے کرے گی بتا دے ایک شرابی سے زینب کلام شام ہائے شام شام ہائے شام شام ہم شام اے نانا میں کیسے سناؤ دربار شکی کا وہ منظر سب ولی و حافظ تھے بیٹے اور سر پہ میری نتی چادر اے نانا تیری بیٹیوں کو اے نانا تیری بیٹیوں کو کیوں لائے ہے سر ننگے عام شام ہائے شام شام ہائے شام شام ہائے شام تیرے عابد پہ تاری غشی تھی اور کلثوم سہمی کھڑی تھی کبھی دیکھو میں زخمی سکینہ جس کے دامن میں آگ لگی تھی کبھی روؤں میں اپنی ردا کو کبھی روؤں میں اپنی ردا کو کبھی دیکھو میں جلتے قیام شام ہائے شام شام ہائے شام 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 تیرے بچوں کو لے کر گئی میں شب بر ساری روتی رہی ہوں کبھی غازی کا لہجہ بدل کے میں پہرے بھی دیتی رہی ہوں ان بیوہ بہو بیٹیوں سے ان بیوہ بہو بیٹیوں سے کیوں کرتے نہیں ہو کلام شام ہائے شام شام ہائے شام شام ہائے شام شام جب روتی تھی بالی سکینہ اور بابا کو اپنے بلاتی، میں دیتی تھی اس کو تسلی اور سینے پہ اپنی سلاتی. روتی زندہ میں معصوم بچی، روتی زندہ میں معصوم بچی، لے لے کے وہ بابا کا نام. شام ہائے شام، شام ہائے شام، شام ہائے شام، شام ہائے شام، شام شام شام. یا حسین 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 یا حسین. سورۃ مبارکۃ الفاتحہ.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم كل وليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا وذليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرزك طوعا وتمتيه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله، السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله، السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين ومسيد الوصيين، السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين، السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا مولى من مولى، السلام عليك يا غريب الغرباء السلطان الحسن مولانا علي بن موسى الرضا، كن شفيعنا وشفيع والدينا في يوم رضائه ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا أصحاب الأزر والزمان سيدي ألمان ألمان ألمان. السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن، السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن، السلام عليك يا كعبة الإيمان، السلام عليك يا إمام الإنس والجان. أجر الله فرجك وسكر الله مخرجك وزهورك ورحمة الله وبركاته.